Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Shall we stand as we're able and begin by singing together? Please join us.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to First Unitarian Portland here in Portland, Oregon. We're a multi-generational community that strives to put love at the center of everything that we do here together. Our work is to nurture our spirits, to help one another wherever we are on our journeys, and to advocate for social justice in the wider world. So whether you're here in person today or joining us online, we're glad you're here. It's good to be together. It is a real pleasure today to welcome the Reverend Dr. Barbara Coeyman to our pulpit. Some of you may remember that Barbara served as our intern minister way back in 2001-2002. She is a UUA accredited interim minister who is currently serving Boulder Valley UU Fellowship in Lafayette, Colorado. She's also a credentialed facilitator with Parker Palmer's Center for Courage and Renewal. So welcome back, Barbara, and it is really great to welcome you. Yeah. If you're new or relatively new here today, you are invited to join our welcome circle over in that corner right after the service, so just by the welcome circle sign. And it's a good time to just find out a little bit more about First Unitarian, ask questions, and meet some other newcomers. So please do join in if you're new or newish. And after the service, everyone is invited to Social Hour in Fuller Hall, which is directly below this sanctuary, so you just go down the stairs and follow the crowd. You'll have a chance to visit our bookstore. If you're kind of shy and don't know if you want to talk with people yet, go on down and look at our books. And we have a lovely art wall there as well. And be sure to stop by our First Connections table, which is open every Sunday, to find out a little bit more about the happenings here at the church. A couple of other announcements. First of all, I have a quiz for you. Who knows what next Sunday is? Homecoming Sunday. That means it's kind of the regathering after people have been off doing what they're doing over the summer. And it's going to be a wonderful all-ages service, so everyone is welcome. And if you have a favorite cookie recipe or some other tasty delight that you like to bake, Next Sunday is the time to bring some to share at our special social hour for Homecoming Sunday. You can find more details in this week's front steps. Just a reminder that tomorrow, Labor Day, you can join fellow congregants in a Workers Over Billionaires rally, which is going on in Portland and also all over the country. You can meet tomorrow at noon on the steps in front of Elliott Chapel, which is just next door. And then you will march to Tom McCall Waterfront Park. And you, again, can get details in the front steps. With the new church year revving up, there are lots of upcoming events and activities where you have chances to connect with folks. The Alliance is starting up again this Wednesday after their summer break. Anti-racism learning circles will begin, and will be participating 2 weeks from today in downtown Sunday Parkway. So be sure to check out front steps every week, because there are always new things happening. And now, let's take a moment to greet our neighbors. I do want to call out to our online folks. Please do use the chat feature. Introduce yourself, maybe tell where you're zooming in from. And now, if you're here, time to say hello. Okay, folks, let's regather. Wow, those are good conversations. Thank you. Okay, Reverend Barbara will be lighting our chalice this morning, and if you're joining online, please do light a candle or chalice if you have one handy. We are Unitarian Universalists. We light this chalice in faith, in hope, and in love.
And a good morning to everyone. I am so pleased to be here with you this morning. Thank you so much for inviting me. Listen to this call to worship. Thresholds. We cross them every day, from room to room, from outside to inside, and back again, from here to there, from anywhere to everywhere, from age to age. Each threshold offers an opportunity for change, for renewal, for transformation, from what we were and what we are to what we can be. In this hour and in this place, we cross a threshold from our day-to-day everydayness into space and time attuned to the other, to the sacred, to the holy, into awareness of new life pregnant with possibilities. How will we be renewed in this moment? How will we be changed by this hour? How will we be transformed through this gathering of beloved community? Come, you longing thirsty souls. Come, my friends, let us worship together this morning and be glad. My friends, it's time now for our responsive reading. I've chosen a reading this morning from the poet Rosemary Traumer, who's from Colorado, where I'm currently living and serving. She lives on the western slope. I invite you to rise in body or in spirit as we share together the responsive reading. I'll read the regular type. I invite you to respond with the italic type. As the weather is changing and the light is changing, as the leaders are changing, and the feelings are changing, and the way that we see each other is changing, I notice the invitation to turn toward the truth of what does not change. Something so vast, so unnameable, so unable to be grasped and held. Something so present, there is no life without it. That knows itself through you, through me, through clover and tree and cloud, and goes on and on and on forever. That I turn again and again toward that.
It's our custom to share our Sunday offering with organizations that share the justice values that we have. And occasionally we share them with other UU organizations, which we've been doing this summer. Today we're sharing our plate with First Unitarian's Chesney Deal Intern Minister Fund. This is a fund that allows us to have intern ministers here with us, and it occasionally needs replenishing. Today is a day of replenishing. In just a moment, our ushers will be around to accept donations of cash and checks. And if you want to give electronically, whether you're online or here, you can use Boxcast's donate box, the QR code that will appear in just a moment, or somewhere in the seats there should be little cards that have that QR code that you can use. Thank you so much for your generosity. During our service each week, we take time to hold the prayer intentions and other milestones of our community. If you're here in person, you can light a candle in either one of our side galleries and leave a prayer request in the urns that are there. And you can always email a request to prayer@firstunitarianportland.org. Our ministers and lay ministers then hold our prayers and provide care throughout the week. We have several items to mention today. It's with both sadness and anger that we grieve the death of those two children, innocent children that lost their lives this past week, as well as the other people, mostly children, that were also shot in that Minneapolis incident. There are simply no adequate words. Longtime member Margot Clark died on August 14th at the age of 71 after living with cancer for several years. Margot served in a lot of roles here at the church. She was a member of our Music and Arts Committee, Leadership Council, was a Sunday morning usher, and for 11 years, many of you may remember the delicious homemade soups that she served Monday nights as we had Monday activities. I was also pleased to serve with her on our Board of Trustees back in the early 2000s, and I have to say Margot was just plain fun to be with. She leaves her husband Bill, kids Janie and Matt and their kids. Our tender thoughts are with the whole family. A memorial gathering will be held for Margot here at the church on Saturday, September 27th at 4 o'clock. Sorry about that. A memorial service will be held for member Mike Couch next Saturday, September 6th at 2 p.m. in the Elliott Chapel. I think most of you know that Mike died on June 25th at the age of 68 after living with Alzheimer's disease for the past 12 years. Longtime member Toni Patchett has let us know that she has entered hospice. She says, "I am reflecting on First Church and how much it has meant to my spiritual journey, my family, and my community. They have been very special to me through the years, and I am so grateful for them." So let's keep Toni in our thoughts and prayers as she navigates this journey. Member Vicki Flaumer had successful transvascular carotid surgery on this past Monday, and she is now back at home recovering. Vicki asks that we continue to hold prayers for her comfort and patience as she moves through this healing process. She says she is grateful. Will you join me in prayer? Gathering Spirit of this hour, we come together today with heavy hearts as we think of Minneapolis, of families whose children are just gone, changed forever by violence, here in a country where meanness often seems louder than kindness. We come carrying our own tender places too. We remember Margot and Mike and miss them. We send love and prayers to Toni and Vicki. Undoubtedly, some of us are celebrating good news, but some not so much. And I suspect many of us are just trying to get through another week with a little grace. May we be gentle with each other and with ourselves. When so much feels uncertain, let's remember that our capacity to care for one another is certain. Our choice to show up for each other, to choose kindness over meanness, to refuse to let fear have the last word, these things remain. May we leave this place today ready to be people who believe that love is stronger than hate, that community matters, and that tomorrow can always be different from today. Amen. Let's be together for a few moments of quiet reflection. Please remain seated as we sing together, Go Lifted Up. Our reading today is an excerpt of a piece by Anna Garland Spencer entitled, Are We Outgrowing the Need for a Church? And you'll notice that the gender language is a little out of date, but we've kept it as the author wrote it for today. And she says, the church, considered as a unit, is the organized expression of man's religious nature. Strip it of all foreign powers and attendant aids, and we find in it that which differentiates it from all other social influences. It is not now, as of old, the controlling power in all the higher concerns of life, but rather one of many moral masters of the world, responsible for the translation of philosophy into worship, of ethics into personal character. On its ideal side, the church is humanity's vision of the perfect put into pictured form. On its practical side, the church is drill master in the culture of the individual will toward right living. In a word, the church is man's poor attempt to make the divine manifest in the human. Today we are to consider whether or not man is outgrowing the church as an institution. All admit that the higher sentiments from which the church has grown will persist and seek ever some form of expression. But art and literature, science and philanthropy, our home and nature seem now to many all-sufficient temples. And no one can deny that whereas in the life of 50 years ago in America, all the better classes were constant churchgoers, many of our most thoughtful and earnest and virtuous people today either do not go to church at all or seldom and spasmodically. The book, the magazine, the newspaper are successful rivals to the sermon. The sanctity and rest of home, the healing and uplifting delights of nature supersede the church service for very many. And there are not wanting those who say that the church, even in its most rationalized and spiritualized forms, is but a halfway house from superstition's altar to the free air of natural aspiration in which each one is his own priest.
Garrett, choir, thank you so much. Thank you for the beautiful offerings this morning, especially as we remember a wonderful world. Thank you. The passage Catherine just read comes from Unitarian minister Reverend Anna Garland Spencer. As you heard it, I wonder if you imagined when it was written. It might sound quite relevant to early 21st century culture, never mind the gender language, and notice there was no mention of social media. In fact, Garland Spencer issued these words in 1929 in the annual Berry Street essay. That is, it's a lecture when a UU minister or ministers is selected to reflect on the current state of ministry each year. Berry Street lectures over the years have addressed fascism, clergy misconduct, poetry and music, and many other subjects relevant to the current state of ministry. In 1929, Garland Spencer reflected on the relevance of church. And by the way, the Berry Street essay is among the oldest continuing lecture series in the United States. It was started in 1820 by the Reverend William Ellery Channing for ministers to talk about best practices in ministry. In 2020, to commemorate the 200th anniversary, many original lectures and modern analyses were published in a study called The Through Line. And if it's not in the bookstore here, I recommend that you get a few copies of The Through Line so you can read not only Garland Spencer's essay, but others. It's a wonderful collection of the history of ministry in this movement. Anna Garland Spencer was the first woman essayist 109 years after the lecture was launched, and 58 years after Unitarians first ordained a woman. I'll leave commentary for you to decide. Her poignant topic was the question, is humanity, that is Western culture, outgrowing the need for church? We can understand reasons for her questioning the need for church in 1929. Church and religious practice are constantly evolving in response to prevailing social and political conditions. Her questioning the need for church was set in a world ripe with global conflicts, as well as many influences from early 21st century modernity. Hers and similar existential questions about the sacred vessels, she called them, that hold the ancient sanctities of life were raised actually as early as 1912 in, for example, a fairly well-known article in the Atlantic magazine about the relevance of church. And by the way, the Atlantic magazine was founded by Unitarians, just as an extra footnote there, yeah. Here in 2025, I expect many of us are experiencing parallel existential questions, perhaps existential crises for some of you, about the survival of long-established institutions, museums, universities, a free press, and so much more, which help us create beloved community. It seems that we wake up each day with new attempts to disrupt and eliminate yet other corners of freedom and democracy, not to speak of safety in our houses of worship and our schools as we send our children off to school each day. Crises which have grounded and defined our identities and contributed to joyful engagement with life. So Garland Spencer's probing the relevance of church was an important question that we also hear in modern times. Reports about the demise of mainstream religion in American culture. A growing number of people identify as spiritual, but not religious, And roughly a quarter of Americans identify as nones. That's N-O-N-E-S. That is, they're not religious. And by the way, I was just on the flight here the other day, I was reading in 2019, kind of an abstract statistic. In 2019, 4,500 congregations in this country folded. And that's pre-pandemic. 4,500 congregations ended in one way or other. Membership in many denominations has seriously declined, even as church attendance usually peaks on the heels of national crises, as it did following 9/11, or the more recent elections twice of current political leadership. And by the way, friends, I was in this sanctuary on the Sunday after 9/11. It was packed. There was standing room only. Folks were sitting in the aisles, standing in the back. It was standing room only. It was packed. It was clear in 2001, and then again in 2016 and 2024, American culture had not outgrown the need for church, especially the liberal church. And by the way, my first day on the job here when I was an intern was September 10th, 2001, yes. I learned quickly. In response to her own question about the need for church, Garland Spencer identified 3 reasons for church, 3 functions, as she called them, in 1929. See how these compare with the relevance of church today, and especially your own reasons for coming to church. First, she said that it is through the institution of church that trusting souls can find healing and joy in a universe in which they occupy an important niche. The church helps us mortals understand what is eternal and universal in life. Church is the bridge to spirit, she said, to the infinity which surrounds us. To quote Reverend Rebecca Parker, in her review of Garland Spencer's essay, Parker said, "Church matters for those who have lost a sense of the sacred worth in the midst of modern life." Garland Spencer's second reason for church was a response to the increasingly specialized lifestyle in thought and action back then, leading to one-sided judgments. She lamented that 6 days out of 7, most of us are only a link, she said, in the vast mechanism of social demand and supply. Doesn't this sound a bit like today's culture, in which so many Americans construct viewpoints and opinions in narrow silos? Spencer was grateful that by participating in religion, we have a chance to devote one day a week, or maybe part of a day, depending on what the soccer schedule is in the afternoon or your shopping schedule, but at least part of one day a week we can devote to church. So to renew our connections with one another and the wholeness of life. For Garland Spencer, this is the role of worship, to create a setting to consider what is worthy in life. In 1929, the need for worship was more pressing than ever, she said. The third reason for church, Garland Spencer was concerned about growing industrialization, secularization, and consumerism replacing church to define American ethical values. She admitted that some secular movements in 1929 were doing a good job of crafting American ethics. Yet she worried about the church lagging behind in what she identified as ethical devotion. The church should offer encompassing ethics, she said. Consider influences from today's industrialization, such as AI, or ChatGPT, or social media, and so much more, in defining the ethical and the social practices here in 2025. So after explaining her 3 essential reasons for church, that is finding worth in life, providing one day a week to rebuild wholeness, and defining ethical standards, you will be pleased to know that Anna Garland Spencer concluded that both humans and the natural world need the institution of church. That is, she said, church is here to stay. However, then comes her huge but. Spoiler alert, this is the core of her message, and mine as well for this sermon. Spencer asserted that if the church is to survive, it must grow constantly. It must change its form with changing conditions, with the ebb and flow of life, as the generations come and go. A place of poetic daring, training, and blessing for all who work for better in the world. But, she says, the church can only do so if it is not encumbered with forms and creeds, as she calls them. That is, by outmoded practices which don't address contemporary life. The church must constantly take on new forms, new projects, new covenants, new philosophies to fulfill its universal functions. Isn't Garland Spencer's proposal for an ongoing change imperative in life, not only in church? That is, having the capacity to adapt, to change forms in positive ways, for genuine transformation, to fulfill new functions. Isn't this capacity for change critical to a creative life? I love the British broadcasting series Call the Midwife. Maybe some of you are addicted to Call the Midwife the way I am. Yeah. It's set in East London in the 1960s. The stories about the midwives of the Order of Nonatus House, who are both nuns and nurses, secular nurses, depict changing needs in mid-20th century public health. In one episode a few years ago, driven by the threatened demolition of their residence in the spirit of progress, the midwives agreed to invite a team of 4 male doctors to live in their building and train in midwifery, so to expand their status in the neighborhood so their building won't be demolished. The midwives' small discontents over new morning routines, such as who gets the limited hot water in the bathroom first, are minor compared to the male doctors' deep learning about personalizing their care for women in the throes of labor. Not to speak of the midwives' adjustments to new bathroom schedules. Nonatus House, it kept changing with changing times. Similarly, Garland Spencer calls Unitarians to keep up with changing times. Indeed, for centuries, liberal religion has asked the question of our opening hymn, where is our holy church? In one humble sermon, I can't review the entire history of change in Unitarian Universalism as much as I like to, but I can remind us about how the capacity for change has been core to liberal religion for centuries. For example, a quick balcony view. Our 16th century ancestors challenged the Calvinist approach to Protestantism, including the doctrine of the Trinity. Our American congregational ancestors in the 19th century grounded their religion on reason, not doctrine or creed. Since Garland Spencer's time through the 20th century, liberal faith has embraced world religions, humanism, identity-based theologies, and has had a merger of Unitarians and Universalists in 1961. In the 21st century, we've included the initiative of the Widening the Circle campaign in 2020. And most recently, if any of you were at General Assembly 2025 in Baltimore, our newest agenda was to meet the moment. That is, to meet the times as they are now, as we shape and form our new attitudes toward Unitarian Universalism. It's no coincidence that our great hymnal is called Singing the Living Tradition. consider changes during your own lifetime in this denomination, which you may want to talk to somebody else about after the service. Tell others your experiences as you use. How is church on Sunday morning and all through the week different from when you joined or first attended? You might also consider how the life of this congregation has changed since its founding in 1865. I'm not implying any of you was here in 1865. But from its first location in a humble chapel on Broadway through the 1920s, and then the building here in this location, the building of a New England chapel in the 1920s, which I understand you've recently celebrated the centennial of, and then the rebuilding of that chapel in 1965 after a fire. Then through the acquisition of this property in this city block, in this sanctuary that we're sitting in. And since my time, since I was here 25 years ago, the acquisition and the addition of the religious education wing. So many changes to this institution that is this congregation. And it's not only physical spaces that have changed. Programs continue to evolve in response to current cultural needs. 25 years ago, advocacy for reproductive rights or immigrant safety from ICE raids didn't carry nearly the urgency of today. So friends, let me now make the proverbial pivot sermons are supposed to include. To amend Garland Spencer's question, to ask not only, are we outgrowing the need for church, but are we outgrowing the need for ministers and ministry? Had she amended her own question in 1929 by ministry, she would have meant ordained ministry. She probably wouldn't have used the phrase shared ministry, even though the sharing of leadership has between clergy and laity for the work of the church has been going on since the inception of most of our congregations. So to answer my own amended question, are we outgrowing the need for ministers and ministry? Obviously, I will emphatically reply no. Church has not outgrown the need for ordained ministers who bring particular and ever-expanding training and credentialing. Informed clergy are central to guiding the universal functions of church in partnership with shared ministries. Still, paralleling Garland Spencer's advice to churches, for ministry to remain relevant, ministers must also change with changing times and the demographics of people they serve. The forms of ministers and ministry must change to nurture the universal functions of church. The Berry Street essays alone, over 200 years, attest to how liberal ministry has evolved since 1920. 200 years ago, ministers likely preached about fairly abstract theological doctrine, but they weren't much real concerned about real life. In my writing the life story of the first ordained Universalist woman minister, Lydia Jenkins, in 1860, I noted how early women ministers changed preaching to be much more relevant to practical needs, especially of women. Often it was said there was standing room only when Lydia Jenkins was in the pulpit. Women flocked to hear her messages. UUs, as I know many of you know, have continued in the forefront of gender advocacy. In the 1990s, for example, the first American denomination to reach a majority of women clergy, and today is supporting a full range of gender identities in ministry. Clergy in any arena of ministry actively promote our commitment to anti-racism, anti-oppression, and multiculturalism. Here at First Church, paralleling changes in congregational life, ministry since 1865 has also changed. Consider, for example, for over a century, settled senior ministers were all male. Most were sons of clergy, and a good number of them had the surname Elliott. Then in 1992, Reverend Marilyn Sewell, as first female senior clergy, opened up new models of staffing, multiple ordained clergy, for example, or a social justice minister, or a minister of music, and much more change. All of whom I had the benefit to learn from during my internship here. And then, in this congregation, following the first senior minister of color, and now with the second woman as senior minister, staffing continues to change and evolve, and I understand is continuing to evolve into new opportunities, signs of vitality in all our congregations, not just here. That ministry and professional leadership continues to evolve. Personally, I certainly have experienced change since I first heard a call to ministry in scope and in my response to the call. Coming to my internship here from a tenured career in academia, of course I knew what I was doing, right? I quickly realized how much about ministry still awaited my growing edges. This congregation was pivotal in confirming my call to parish work and eventually my focus on intentional interim ministry for its deep potential to support change and transformation. In any given ministry I offer, I feel I've fulfilled my call if at least one person in this room today goes away a little or a lot changed. I've served 9 interim congregations to date, from New England to Mid-Atlantic to Utah, and I'm currently in the beautiful state of Colorado. As Catherine said, one addition to my ministry the past 10 years has been credentialing as a facilitator with the Center for Courage and Renewal, a spiritual approach based on the writing of Quaker Parker Palmer. The primary practice in courage work, as we call it, is circles of trust, which resembles the UU program Evensong, which I understand some of you have followed or studied. Circles of trust nurtures compassionate communication, deep listening, and authentic and trusting expressions of identity. I apply circles of trust to great effect in interim ministry, especially in congregational settings going through cultural change. I'm happy to visit with anyone after the service to explain more about circles of trust, which are available online and also in person. I actually have several Circles of Trust colleagues here in Portland. Well, friends, I hope I've expanded your perspective on the need for church and leadership of religious professionals by religious professionals. I invite all of us, including myself as an intentional change minister, to remain open constantly to new possibilities for both the institution of church and the many individuals who serve, lay and ordained. Our world is in inordinate turmoil right now. So much change that we can't control is swirling all around us. May we stay fast and dedicated to regular grounding and connection with our liberal church as one of the institutions in which we do have some control over forms and functions, as the church calls us always forward in radical agency to build beloved community. During these times of challenge and change, may we covenant, my friends, to be curious, not reactive, contributing, not confronting, as we walk together in accountability and liberal faith. May all this be so. As I said, so good to be back in this pulpit. Thank you. Thank you. And so we go out singing about a new way. Our final hymn this morning is number 1017 in the hymnal, Building a New Way. The words will be on the screen. Garrett will play and lead. Joe will play and lead. Both of you. You'll play together. Yes, please rise in body or spirit. Let's sing about changing a new way. For those of you who have come here seeking God, may God go with you. For those of you who have come here seeking life, may life return your affection. For those of you who have come here seeking a better way, may that way be found and the courage to take it step by step. When you leave here this morning, my friends, go in peace. When you return to this sacred space, return in love and in hope and in transformation. Amen. Shalom. Salam. Namaste. Blessed be. I understand we have a lovely postlude, which we invite you to resume your seats for. you.